Hi, everyone. Before getting to the questions, I just wanted to thank everyone in the class and Professor Sweat for making this class such a fun experience. The part of the class I found most surprising and interesting was the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis on language. The fact that language can actually shape the way people perceive reality came as a shock because I didn't think language could work that way. In fact, George Orwell's book, 1984, started to make a lot more sense to me. It was a book I read in high school about a totalitarian government that tries to control the people using different techniques. And one of those techniques was newspeak. Words that people could normally use to express freedom of thought and self expression were removed from the vocabulary. For example, the word free was only used if, like, your dog was free of lice. It didn't mean freedom the way we understand it. There was no true word for freedom. I always thought it was a corny idea. But if the Sapir-Whorf theory is true, then I suppose Orwell came up with a really clever way to manipulate the population. Another thing that really excited me about this class was learning about different cultures from you guys. It's much more interesting to learn about different cultures from first-hand accounts than from reading something somewhere. I apologize in advance for butchering your names, but Andrea and Megali taught me a lot of the Mexican culture. Not knowing anyone from the Indian culture, I learned a lot from Shrija. The same with Jan Zhaj and the Albanian culture. Some of us brought mixed cultural influences to the table, like Miku, who blended Mexican and Japanese, and Yasmin, who blended Armenian and Dutch. When reading everyone's posts, I always found myself comparing them to me and my own culture, and either going yup, yup, or no. It was the notes that were more interesting because it helped me see how different people can do things differently and still be just fine. As far as my personal communication, I think that I am now more tolerant of other people's behaviors than I was before. Instead of jumping to conclusions, I ask for explanations. For example, I have an uncle who I kinda sorta avoid because he uses a lot of bad language. I always thought he was just rude and obnoxious. Because of this class, I went up to him and asked why he did that so much, and he explained that when he was in the Marines, the culture was in a way that bad words were a normal part of communication. He just picked up on it and it stuck with him. As far as looking ahead, cultural communication is something that I can always keep learning because I like communicating with people, but I don't have a lot of experience with different cultures. So that would be a great thing to do. Something I would really like to learn more about is the influence of US culture on those of us born and raised here. This is kind of hard to explain, but in this class, we talked about how our different cultures make us different and unique. But I wonder how much of our native culture is lost over the generations by living in a melting pot type environment like the US. Like, how will my kids identify? Or their kids? I think it will be harder and harder for successive generations to maintain their parental cultural identities. I mean, if anywhere, down the line, an Armenian parent decides not to teach their child the Armenian language, from what I've learned over the past few weeks, a huge part of that child's Armenian identity will be lost. Anyhow, thanks for listening.